Hello everyone, welcome back. This is a long time coming. I've been putting off this video for a while and for a couple different reasons. And I'm going to do something a little bit different in terms of presentation today. We're not getting in front of the bookshelves. It's a nice sunny day and I thought I might as well show off my new coffee table, which is, it's not really showing it off very well, but we're going to go through my collection of Richard Brautigan books. And so I've been kind of hinting at this for a while, and actually I've acquired a few more since I've started hinting at it. And yeah, I thought it's an interesting collection. It's almost, I wouldn't say it's complete, nor do I really feel like I need to complete this. Mainly because you really get into the territory of the super rare ones, stuff like that. And but in terms of what you can find pretty readily available, I think I'm only missing about 4. So we're going to get into it today. I'm going to go through chronologically, talk about each one of these. Hopefully my arm doesn't get too tired. This is the first time doing a freehand as opposed to something on a, something set up a little bit more. We'll see how it goes. I've got a couple other authors I could do something like this in terms of going through the books, but this is probably my favorite and probably the most interesting, so we'll see how it goes. Yeah, so I've got everything stacked here in chronological order in terms of publication. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about them, which ones I've read, what I know about the ones I haven't read. Maybe I'll read a little story from each of them, because I think that's kind of fun, and it's not too hard to do because they're so short. So starting off, if we go to the top of it, we'll see how fun and interesting this all is. This is the first book in terms of first in publication. This is the Confederate General from Big Sur, as you can tell. My copy, this is actually the only copy I think I would actually update if I were to update a copy from this collection. I'm quite happy with what I have. And like I said, I'm not typically one to collect books, or collect books, I should say, in terms of like nice editions, having a completionist's collection of the entire bibliography, stuff like that. This, like I said, is the only one I probably would update because you can tell it's a little worn, spine's a bit worn. Let's see what the back is like. Not too bad. Open books, got it for $4. That's something I'll say too. I don't spend a lot of money on these. I could spend a lot of money, and if you look online, some of them are very pricey, some of them are dirt cheap. It kind of just depends. And so I think I spend about $20 at max per book. And I've been quite lucky in some situations. I'm just overall grateful to have what I have. And I think honestly, if you're getting into Richard Brautigan, you can get the little paperbacks like this. I think they're fun, they're colorful as you can tell, very nice to look at. But what really is interesting to me, or I guess I should say, what's the easiest way to get in is those compendiums. They will collect 3 of these stories altogether. The most popular of which, if I just quickly point out, I believe is Trout Fishing and the Sugar Hill Mine and Watermelon Sugar. And that's, I think, a great starter point. I think a lot of people, that's what they do in terms of starting to get into Richard Brautigan. And I think that's a really great way of just exploring him. So to get into it, because I keep prefacing this too much, Confederate General. This was the second one I read. And like I said, first he's published. A lot of people, they like it or they don't like it. This is, I think, the one when people talk about Richard Brautigan and consider him to be like a beat poet or in line with the beats, it's because of this one. And I don't think that's really a fair assessment. I feel like Richard Brautigan, while he was in San Francisco, Big Sur, that whole area, same thing with like a Kerouac, I don't think he was really in that group. He was kind of doing his own thing. And personally, I see this as a parody of a Kerouac book. Kerouac, he's an interesting author for sure. Not my personal favorite. I actually prefer to read this Big Sur here as opposed to the Kerouac Big Sur. I've actually not read the Kerouac Big Sur. But, if you've read like Dharma Bums or On the Road, I think you could really, especially Dharma Bums, I would say. This is like a parody of that, and just in Brautigan's style. So if I can take a look, and I'll pull these at random because I could have gone through and maybe picked one. Let me see. I don't want to make this last forever, so As you can tell, this is a little bit more of a novel. There's more of a structured narrative to it. Let's see. I don't know what's a good little thing. I did this, if you remember correctly, when I was talking about picking up some of these. I read stories at random of some of these, but I don't know, actually. With the more of a structured novel, the Pork Chop Alligator. Maybe we'll do that one. I don't know if I'll read the whole thing, because how long is this chapter? I'm trying to remember it, too. I read this, I want to say, back in 2022. It's only 2 pages. I don't know how much I'll read of it. Maybe I will finish it. Maybe I'll just read the little bit we got here. Have a pork chop, Lee Mellon said, stuffing a pork chop down the alligator's throat. The alligator was stirring in his lap. The alligator said, growl, op, 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 with the end of the pork chop sticking out of his mouth. It's a funny little one. I do remember that being like one of the more fun parts. I like this book. I will say, though, that it's not my favorite. I think it exists in the realm, it exists because of the Kerouac book. While I like Brautigan doing a Kerouac style better than Kerouac, I have to admit that, you can't, this doesn't exist without the Kerouac legacy. Because this came out, 64, but it was written in 61. And that's peak Jack Kerouac era, if you think about it. This is when Jack Kerouac was at his biggest, especially the San Francisco area. So there's no doubt about it that this is just him kind of following in line with that. I don't know if he's really figured out his whole thing yet. But yeah, I think that's just an interesting way to start out his bibliography. Next up is quite a big one, Trout Fishing in America. And this is the first I ever read, first I ever picked up. I believe I paid $1 for this. It says $2.80, but this was at a store where everything's $1. And this is another one of those little ones. I do kind of like the bigger presentation, but I don't mind this. And with it being this where I started with Brautigan, I have no problems. Trout Fishing in America, I highly recommend you get one that has this as the cover. Compendium has this as the cover, and it's because there's a story at the beginning that references the cover. And there's one that had the little fish drawing. Let me see. This one's got a fun little note. Someone writing all their thoughts. That wasn't me. Let's see, where is it? Where is that little fish drawing? There we go. Some of them will have this as the cover, the little drawing of the fish. I do not recommend that because I feel like it's bizarre. They'll invert it, essentially. They have this picture on the inside. But it says, the whole story, if I go to it. Because I don't really want to spoil too much of trout fishing if you've never read it. Let's see. Boy, it's hard to do this one-handed, so I apologize for taking my time. Let's see. The cover for Trout Fishing in America is the photograph taken in the afternoon, a photograph of the Benjamin Franklin statue in San Francisco, Washington Park. And as you can tell, that's what that is behind him. And so it's it's great. It almost has this postmodern feel to it immediately. Not that Richard Brautigan is really the most postmodern guy or whatnot, but it sets the tone. I really like this as a starting point for getting into Brautigan. I think it's very interesting, but I could also see a lot of people not liking it. I think you either really like this or you are perplexed by it, and it's fair enough if you are, but if you're really into this, you're going to have a fun time with the rest of them. So let's see. Is there anything else I'd like to say about Trout Fishing in America? I don't know. It's an interesting little starter. It's like I said, the first one I've read, and so it's been the longest since I've gotten to it. I really like the green pages with the pink. It adds to the bizarre nature, and it feels very fishy, this little salmon color. Yeah, like I said, nice little addition. Next up we got, this is the most recent I've read, is In Watermelon Sugar. And I really like this edition. It's a little beat up, but I have no problems. Sure, it's got a little mark here, but you can read it. Sure, it's got a little coffee stain, but you can read it. Got a little ominous Brautigan on it. These are all very interesting. Very interesting little Brautigans. That's always fun about it, is the pictures and the women he decides to put on the cover. So this is a Delta edition. This one I got for $10. Open Books once again pulling through. This was an interesting one because I I do scour their online database, Open Books. And so I saw that this was in, and instead of just ordering it, I still like to go into the bookstore and buy it. And so obviously I'm going over to where I know all the Brautigans are. I'm like, oh, it's gone already. And I realized it's at the front of the store on a little pedestal. So unless you're looking for it like I was, you're not going to get it. Like I said, I read this over the summer. This is my most recent Richard Brautigan. And I wasn't really that impressed, to be honest. This is one that a lot of people like. But for me, it was just okay. This is, I believe, 1968 when this was published. So it's the peak of Richard Brautigan. It's a story of like this hippie commune, like kind of post-apocalyptic world, but it doesn't really feel bad or like dismal because it's Richard Brautigan writing about it. And, I found it interesting. It's an interesting dichotomy, a lot of stuff about death. I think it's one that deserves a reread. But in terms of me enjoying it, I was just kind of like, I don't know, there's other stuff I enjoyed more. And I'll get to why. I do really like the My Name story in this, which I think is the one that everyone likes. So you can kind of tell, watermelon sugar. Let's see. It's early on in the book, the My Name. Where is it? Well, you can tell this one's another, it's spaced out more, because these are the small little mass market paperback editions. My Name. Let's see if I can film it. I'm going to try not reading through the viewfinder. How about make that a little easier? I guess you are kind of curious as to who I am, but I am one of those who do not have a regular name. My name depends on you. Just call me whatever it is in your mind. If you are thinking about something and that happened a long time ago, somebody asks you a question and you do not know the name or the answer. Gosh, it's hard to read on video. Like this, at least, where I'm like, am I filming it right? Let's get back to it. Somebody asks you a question and you do not know the answer. That is my name. Perhaps it was raining very hard. That is my name. Or somebody wanted to do something. You did it. Then they told you what you did was wrong. Sorry for the mistake. And you had to do something else. That is my name. Perhaps it was a game that you played when you were a child, or something that came idly into your mind when you were old and sitting in a chair near a window. That is my name. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but that's one of my favorite little sections of this. It's very early on in the book, like I said, page 4 and 5. And unfortunately, that's where it like tops out for me. That's an iconic Richard Brautigan little story excerpt. I don't know. It's not bad. I'll go back to it. But like for some people, like I said, this is their absolute favorite. And for me, it's not. And that's all right. I don't know. So we'll move on from Watermelon Sugar to the Pill versus the Sugar Hill Mine Disaster. I just bought this over the summer. I have not read it yet. So we're on the first one that I haven't read. Let me readjust as I'm just sitting on the floor here next to my coffee table. My very nice glass coffee table. It's wood too. Not to distract from the topic at hand. We've got the Pill versus the Sugar Hill Mine Disaster by Richard Brautigan, not featuring a Brautigan, just another Brautigan girl in a home of disaster. This is a collection of poems, so it'd be very easy to read. The reason, I could easily read all of these. I don't know if I've really explained. I haven't in this video, but if you've been following along too much, I don't want to burn through all these immediately because I could read them in a day, in a weekend, whatever. What I'm doing is I'm trying to read one every 6 months or so. And so I've gotten to a handful of them over the last couple years, and I keep expanding my collection. This year, I think I've collected about 4 more or so. Where did I get this one? I bought this in La Crosse, Wisconsin at the whatever bookstore is there. Maybe I'll edit that in because I'm forgetting the name right now. Do I have a bookmark from it? I don't know. But it's a nice yellow. I like this collection. Like I said, you can get this in the compendium. Maybe that's the easiest and best way to get it. Just because it's so small. Like it literally is the smallest. Anything I know it's so thin, it gets lost on the shelf. But yeah, collection of poems. This is the first, as you can tell, a lot more limited. The first and only recollection to my knowledge where he refers to, here's the bookmark. And it's saved at the, Pearl Street Books. Let me see. Pearl Street Books out in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Highly recommend. It's a very nice bookstore. If you're ever out there, if you're someone who's in the driftless zone, If you're passing through on your way to Minneapolis, if you're passing through on your way to Madison or Chicago, highly recommend. But why that bookmark was there is Richard Brautigan, his style really reminds me of the Grateful Dead. I got into Richard Brautigan much earlier than the Grateful Dead. And when I say that, I mean more so the lyrical content, you know, the hippie 60s San Francisco kind of stuff, but also the artistic nature of both their mediums. I think the Grateful Dead, it's all simplistic blues music, and it's so repetitive, you know, it goes on forever. It's the same riff or whatever, but it's not. It's how many ways you can do the same, you can use that blues riff over and over. And it's kind of the same thing here with Richard Brautigan. He's not using a lot of words. He's using very few words, very limited words, but he's saying a lot, and he's saying it in such an interesting and unique way. So this is the only instance I know of where he actually on page references the Grateful Dead, because I really tie those two together. The aesthetic, obviously, like the whole 60s San Francisco thing, but beyond that, their artistic nature of using a very simple and limited art medium, but doing a lot with it, and really sounding nothing like anyone else or reading unlike anyone else. So if I read this one here, this is about the only story I've read in this collection too. The day they busted the Grateful Dead. The day they busted the Grateful Dead, rain stormed against San Francisco, like hot swampy scissors cutting justice into the evil clothes that alligators wear. The day they busted the Grateful Dead was like a flight of winged alligators, carefully measured marble with black rubber telescopes. The day they busted the Grateful Dead turned like the wet breath of alligators blowing up balloons the size of the halls of justice. Another alligator story. I know I didn't finish the Confederate general one, but alligators have a very comedic style, or a very comedic presence, I would say, in many things, but especially in Richard Brautigan. And I don't know how many more instances we get of alligators, but I just imagine like a cartoon alligator in all these scenarios. I'm trying to get this bookmark back in. It's not easy doing this one-handed. This is not my style of how I film videos, but I don't know. Let me know if it's enjoyable. Getting back to it, we've got here Rommel Drives Deep into Egypt, another collection of poems. I believe this is 1970, I want to say. Maybe 69, 70. Similar, in fact, poetry, just the Brautigan girl. There is a music video by Kate Mose that I'll link in the description that I didn't know about until I got to about a year ago or so. Essentially, that music video, I was someone who was big into all the garage rock of the 2010s, and I didn't even know about this song or the video or whatever, this artist, Kate Mose. But the music video itself is filmed by Kansas Bowling, and it's just a recreation of all these covers around San Francisco and the Bay Area and stuff like that. So it's very interesting. I highly recommend for any Richard Brautigan fan, especially of these little paperbacks, because this one just reminds me particularly because there's a scene where they do the Rommel Drives Deep into Egypt in the sandbox. So this is another poetry collection. Haven't read this yet. I acquired this about a year ago from a friend of Barbed Wire Books on Instagram. The guy is located in Toronto, Canada. So if you are Canadian, highly recommend reaching out to him about getting books. Also, lead guitarist of the famed Titus Andronicus, one of the greatest rock bands of our current day. So let's see. I'm going to read that one. It's a fun, short one. Please, do you think of me as often as I think of you? That's a fun one. I do want to get to these poetry ones. I'm not a huge poetry guy, and I feel like these will burn through immediately because they're 100 pages. most poetry collections are pretty short, but I feel like both of these I could easily burn through, which is not how you're supposed to read poetry, but I guess this is less than 100, probably 80. Not how you're supposed to read poetry, but I do like the size and feel of this. I think this is one of my optimal ways of reading Richard Brautigan, and the way that when you think of the 60s, someone carrying this around, I like the beat up nature of it. Are these Delta editions like this and the Watermelon Sugar one. And so, yeah, I don't know what else to say. Like I said, I have not read this one yet, but more poetry. It's hard to prioritize the poetry, like I said, because it's not really my thing, but also so many of these other ones, especially as we get into the 70s, are just more enthralling in my opinion. So it's like when I come around to the 6-month mark of like when I'm going to read another Richard Brautigan, which one do I pick up? It's rarely thinking of the poetry ones. All right, on to one I have read. Read this about a year and a half ago. Revenge of the Lawn, Stories, 1962 to 70. Another Richard Brautigan girl. No Brautigan on here. Interesting. $5 at Open Books. Open Books, they've been coming in clutch, helping me build out this collection. This is a pocket edition, so it's another little one. If I pulled it up just for comparison, smaller than the Deltas, but mass market paperback kind of size. I love this cover. It reminds me of the Beach House album Devotion. That cake, that wooden chair, just the nice smiling 70s lady. I don't know. This one is an interesting one. So it's from 1962 to 1970, which is about the time when Richard Brautigan really comes to fame. So some of these stories are pre-fame, some of them are post-fame, and it's a little bit of a mixed bag because of that. But I will also say some of these are some of the best I've read of him, and I highly recommend Revenge of the Lawn. This is in another collection that I think, another compendium collection. I forget what's in it. Hawkline Monster maybe, and the abortion. So as you might notice, and we haven't really gotten to it yet because chronologically it wouldn't come in, the one I'm missing is the abortion. That's probably the biggest of what I'm missing. And so that was probably in that collection as well. To get to it though, and Revenge of the Lawn, let's see, I don't know what a story is that would be interesting. They're stories as opposed to poems, so they're a little longer, but they are non sequiturs of sorts, don't really tie in together. That could be a fun one. The Lost Chapter from Trout Fishing in America, Rembrandt Creek and Carthage Sink. Let's see. I'll just read the introduction of these. These 2 chapters were lost in the late winter, early spring of 1961. I was looking all over for them, but I couldn't find them anywhere. I haven't the slightest idea why I didn't rewrite them as soon as I realized that they were gone. It's a real puzzler, but I didn't, and now 8 years later, I've decided to return to the winter that I was 26 years old, living on Greenwich Street in San Francisco. Married, had an infant daughter, and wrote these 2 chapters towards a vision of America, and then lost them. I'm going back there now to see if I can find them. So, you get the Rembrandt Creek, let me see how long they are, and Carthage Sink. It's a little too long for me to read with my arm getting tired, and we're only like halfway through the books. Luckily, I've read less of these, so we're getting to them. But I just picked this up last week. This is Richard Brautigan's Hawkline Monster, a Gothic Western. Now we're getting to the point of the 70s. This is 74, I believe, another pocket edition, so it matches quite nicely on my shelf with Revenge of the Lawn. If I can find a copy of The Abortion that goes along with it, it'll look very nice and uniform. So, the Hawkline Monster, you get a nice Victorian house on the cover. There's a lot of good versions of this. This is, I end up with all exclusively hardcovers after this, which is nice. I'm not someone who really cares too much about the hardcovers or prioritizing them or idolizing them and memorializing books with the nicest edition. I'm perfectly fine with this. How much did I pay for this? This is a $5 pick from, if you'll remember correctly, talking about some of these other ones, if you've watched that video where I read through some of the later editions. I got them from a book sale called Paper or Plastic here in Chicago. You can follow them on Instagram as well. They, I believe, sell online as well, but I've only ever bought stuff in person. Guy's very nice, highly recommend, good prices. He had a whole bookshelf of $5 books, and this was one of them, and just such great condition. This might be what I read next. So I'm coming up on the 6 months, like I said. And so in January and then like the middle of the summer, I usually read a Brautigan. I kind of want to read this one. It's been long on my list of, or I should say, of all the genre ones, I think it's probably the most popular, most renowned. This is the one that had the movie rights sold for it. It never was turned into a movie, but there's rumors of it now coming back to be turned into a movie. And so I think that could be really interesting. This is, I think, 200 or so pages, so it's pretty long for a Brautigan as a novel, too. Now we're getting to the point of the 1970s in which Richard Brautigan is experimenting with genre fiction. As you can tell, a Gothic Western. He is typically blending genres. He's blending in things that are normally not put together. So a Gothic and a Western, maybe not the most unheard of, but I think this is the most popular of any of those genre ones. Have not read it yet, so it'll be a little fun if I can find a fun little section to read out of the middle of nowhere with no context. What is this one called? The Butler Conclusion. I'll read the first paragraph. When they finally arrived at the body of the dead butler, they really had a surprise waiting for them. One of the Hawkline women put her hands up to her mouth as if to stifle a scream. The other Miss Hawkline turned while white as a ghost. Gosh, it's hard to focus and read this. White as a ghost. Greer sighed. Cameron put his finger in his ear and scratched it. What the fuck next? He said. Okay, well, with no context, we'll see. That feels very different. Feels very murder mystery. So we'll get to it. I feel like a mystery is also a big one, and we'll get to that with what's coming up next. So this is one I have read. I read this about a year ago, and when I do my list of favorite books of the year, this will be on there as the first book I read in 2024. This might be my favorite cover. Aside from Hawkline Monster, and now we're getting to the point where there's no more Brautigans on the cover. There's no more Brautigan girls. But yeah, Richard Brautigan, Willard and his bowling trophies, a perverse mystery. So this mixes in a little bit of eroticism and mystery. We get the Brautigan on the back. He's a little pensive. It's an interesting little cover of him. $10 again at Open Books. They sell online to the U.S. too. So if you live anywhere in America, you can try to steal these books out of my hands by buying them first. But I think I've got most of them, so I'm good giving that tip away. Richard Brautigan, Willard and his bowling trophies. If you watch that music video I referenced before, that's the only place where you can actually see footage of the actual Willard. No bowling trophies though, but he was a paper mache bird that Richard Brautigan owned, and no one had really seen before. This is an interesting story. This is up there with trout fishing in my opinion, of my favorites of Richard Brautigan. And let's see. I don't know where to read from, but the story takes place in an apartment complex, and so each floor has a different little set of characters, who's inhabiting your apartment unit, and they all the stories blend together because of that. So you've got Willard, the paper mache bird, downstairs, and he's surrounded by all these bowling trophies. How'd he get them? I don't know. You've got this couple, two different couples, one on the second and one on the third floor, and they get into some mischief. Kind of related to the bowling trophies. It's a little hard to explain, and like I said, it's been a year since I've read this. This is the most detailed of any Brautigan I've read, in terms of it being a novel, in terms of it being a succinct story, not just non sequiturs or something like that. And I think because I read this and then I read In Watermelon Sugar after, I was a little disappointed by In Watermelon Sugar because I feel like there's so much more to this. This is also this is 1975. It looks like 1975. Like those colors, that font, that artistry, it's incredible. The story is equally as 70s. I think there's a part where one of the characters is sitting in bed eating a turkey sandwich and drinking a glass of milk, watching Johnny Carson. And to me, that, I don't know why, but that just sounds very 70s. So very interesting, little bizarre story. There's a lot of weird BDSM stuff that comes up in here, which makes it the perverse aspect. The mystery is, how did those bowling trophies get there? There's some brothers who, if I can roll through, trying to remember what their names are, the Logan brothers. They are the ones who acquired these bowling trophies. They were star bowlers, really ideal sons, all, stand-up citizens, and when their bowling trophies disappear and they go on the hunt for them, they turn into malicious and quite nasty guys. And I think that character development, I've never seen that in a Brautigan before, where he develops characters so deeply like that. And so that's what it really impresses me so much, is his ability to write a story, like a really good one. So let's see, what's a good little thing to read? Once again, this is another one where there's not really spaghetti. There we go. Bob was eating when Constance came back into the kitchen. She had been gone for about 10 minutes. He had poured the sauce over a couple of slices of bread. Jeez, I can't read anything today. It's so hard between all of us. Where were you? He said. I was in the front room, she said. Oh, he said. There was a green container of Kraft Parmesan cheese on the table beside his plate, but there were no cheese on his spaghetti sauce bread. He had forgotten to use it. He had felt a little better looking at Constance now because the rope marks on her wrists were gone. Now he wouldn't look away in embarrassment when she was around him. She went over to the stove and put some water on for tea. So you get a little hints of living in an apartment, couples, domestic stuff. It does go on. It does continue on. What are you doing? He said. I'm putting some water on for tea, Constance said. I feel like a cup of tea. That sounds good, he said, eating a bite of red bread. He went over to the table and sat down in a chair beside him. You look tired, she said softly. That's funny. I don't feel tired, Bob said. How would you know? Constance thought. How would you ever know? Very interesting. It's very hard. Like I said, I'm trying to film this while also read, and it's not the easiest. Next up, this is the other contender, if I don't read Hawkline Monster, is Dreaming of Babylon. I actually, not only do I have this copy of Dreaming of Babylon, I got a second one. I don't know what's in there. It's a CTA card. Old transit card from about 10 years ago. I'll tell the story on this one. So I, open books, got that one, got most of them. This was a paper or plastic collection as well. I went back the second week. I think I recorded that video, the first one that I'm talking about. And then I went back the next weekend and I bought this. And then over the summer, I was out in the middle of Wisconsin, and I went to a book sale that's held in a farmhouse out in rural Wisconsin. And what did I find? I found another copy of Dreaming of Babylon. Why did I buy it, though? Well, and which one is which? The nice laminate of the cover is from paper or plastic, but the book itself, this one here, is what I found in the barn because this is a first edition. Let's see, that's not the right page. But yeah, I found this, and I believe I paid $3 maybe for it because it was a hardcover. Let's see. Yeah, first printing. I don't know if that really means much. But so it was originally in this paper cover, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with it, but I thought might as well keep it uniform with the other ones I have over there that have more of a laminate. And this one is a second printing. Yeah, I got this for $15. So $3 versus $15. I am more than happy to pass this along to someone else. Anyone who's also looking for a collection of Brautigans, building out their collection, I should say. Second printing. So, yeah, interesting enough. Dreaming of Babylon. I might read this next too. This is a private eye novel, 1942. A little bit more of a mystery selection. I do like this cover because it feels very 70s meets 40s. This is like the most 70s looking 1940s you can get, which is, once again, a fun aspect of the Brautigans. I believe this is 76 when this comes out. Let's see, does it have a price in there? It says $10, but I paid $3 for this. It was in a barn. They did not want me disclosing I showed up there, and they're like, how did you find out about this place? Because it's about 10 minutes away from where I usually stay when I'm in Wisconsin. And yeah, they're like, oh, someone, when I told them, I was like, oh, I know people who've been here before. They were, they were like, oh yeah, because someone put this on Google Maps, and I've been trying to get the address off there. I don't know why they're trying to get rid of selling. They want to sell books, but they don't want to sell them to the public at large, I guess. I don't know. Let's start with the beginning on this one, because I don't know anything about this book. Good news, bad news. January 2nd, 1942, had some good news and some bad news. First, the good news. I found out that I was 4F and wasn't going off to World War II to be a soldier boy. I didn't feel unpatriotic at all because I had fought in World War II 5 years before in Spain. Fought my World War II 5 years before in Spain and had a couple of bullet holes in my ass to prove it. I'll never figure out why I got shot in the ass. Anyways, it made a lousy war story. People don't look up to you as a hero when you tell them that you were shot in the ass. They don't take you seriously, but that wasn't my problem at all. My problem anymore at all. That war that was started for the rest of America was over for me. So, as you can tell, it's already silly and funny and goofy. It's like trying to take the reverence of 1940s Private Eye and World War II and just kind of give it that Brautigan twist. I don't need two of these. I'm interested in reading this too. If you've read Hawkline Monster, if you've read Dreaming of Babylon, please let me know which one I should prioritize it will be one of these that I read in the next month. And I'm excited for either of them. Any of them, I don't know. Next up, we got Sombrero Fallout. I have not read this one. This is a beautiful cover, though. Actually, there's no Brautigan on the back of this. Sombrero Fallout. Have not read this one. A Japanese novel. So we get into the Japanese period of Richard Brautigan, which there was a point where he was living in Japan. He was also living in Montana. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And so we get to it. This actually might be him in Montana. That's a great Brautigan, in my opinion. That hat, crazy. He's got some good hats. He's got some good hair. Style icon. Richard Brautigan, Sombrero Fallout. If I remember correctly, like from what I've read about or heard and read about this book, it is about a little village of people that lives in a sombrero or something that's falling out of the sky. And let's read a little quick one. Hamburgers. An idea took immediate form in the unemployed man's mind. The sombrero was still lying in the street. The mayor's cousin had failed to pick it up. He had jumped back as if he were being stung by a bee when he tried to pick it up. The sombrero lay there. Perhaps if the unemployed man picked up the sombrero and handed it to the mayor would give him a job and he could stop eating berries and eat a lot of hamburgers instead. He looked back at the sombrero lying on the street and his mouth started watering at the imagined taste of hamburgers, with lots of onions and catsup on them. He would not let his chances go by. He may never be employed again if he did not pick up that sombrero and hand it to the mayor. It's a fun one. That feels very Brautigan. Like I said, have not read this, and I love the idea of, that's why I'm trying to read from these, is that you could just pick up and you get a sense of his style immediately. And it doesn't feel like you're really missing much. I mean, you are, but like, it's kind of take it or leave it. So this is another, I believe, first printing. Let's see. Or it doesn't even say. Because that's the thing with these later ones, is he was losing a lot of popularity at this point. And, you know, his key audience of people who was reading him back in the days of the black and white girls and the creepy photos and whatever else, the San Francisco days, were not really vibing with it anymore. The 60s were dead to everyone but the hardcore fans, and they were slowly dwindling away as this went on. These aren't even in order anymore. So, yeah, Sombrero Fallout, another interesting one. I would love to get to this as well. It's just like, once again, I'm trying not to burn through all these. I believe in this period, too, he's also got Loading Mercury with a Pitchfork, which is another poetry collection. Would love to get that. But that's another one I'm looking for. And then also June 30th, which is another Japanese novel. I would be disappointed not to find them in these nice hardcovers, though. Like I said, I'm not someone who's like, I need to get the uniform editions, the nice editions, the first printings, that kind of thing. But once they're all sitting together on the shelf, it just looks so nice. Yeah, Sombrero Fallout. I love those fonts. That Simon & Schuster era really puts a lot of quality into the books. It's unfortunate that he was not doing well at this point, popularity-wise. They were kind of all over the place. Some of them were doing well, some of them were not. But none of them were as good as Trout Fishing or In Watermelon Sugar in terms of popularity and success. So it's kind of sad. Now on to the last of what I own. This is from 1980, is the Tokyo Montana Express. And I really want to get to this. Once again, these were from the Paper or Plastic sale, I believe. Like I said, the other one was $15, Paper or Plastic. Let me get the little shout out here. Nice bookmarks. I forget how much I paid for this, but it's probably around $15, if it'll say. I'm sorry for going back and forth on all these books too, but that's how it goes. I don't know if it's going to say in here. I believe it was another $15 for this, maybe anywhere between $10 and $20. But Tokyo Montana as well, got at that sale. So it was nice to get all three of these. How much is this one? $15. So, like I said, have not paid more than $20 for a single edition of anything in these collections. And it's been very nice. I love this cover. Love the back photo. It's the first time we get a Brautigan in color. Him and his wife at the time, Sheena. And apparently that wedding did not go, or that marriage, I should say, did not go on for very long. Did not go super well. Apparently she didn't even speak English. And I'll get to it, but I guess I'll mention it now that we're at the end. I was also reading, this is a little bit of an added thing, Downstream from Trout Fishing in America is a memoir of Richard Brautigan by his friend Keith Abbott. This came out 5 years after his death, and it's interesting because he mentions a lot of stuff about him as a friend. It's not a very complete, it's as long as a Brautigan would be. It's about as long. It's under 200 pages, and it's an interesting biography in a sense, but I wouldn't say it's like very all-encompassing. I think if you're a big Brautigan fan, you should read this. You should pick it up. But I don't think it's as good as I haven't read it yet. But the Jubilee Hitchhiker, I feel like, is a much more interesting, better use of your time, considering that seems more all-encompassing from what I've heard on it. It's much longer and a lot more detailed. This really, though, it's everything from Abbott's perspective. So it's him as a friend. So like he knew him during San Francisco. He came to visit him in Montana. He never really knew him in Japan. So you miss out on that aspect of it. And really it's just like I don't know. It's an incomplete narrative. He also starts to do a little bit of literary analysis in this book of Brautigan's work, which I think is interesting. But for it to be like the last chapter in an already short book, it doesn't feel very great. Or at least not that well done. There are nice pictures in here. I'm trying to find them. Of Brautigan. You get some rare Brautigans in here. Where is it? Gosh. Doing this one-handed is not fun. I really should... what kind of bookmark did I leave in this? Oh. This, I believe, is from the publication of this book. Capra Press, Santa Barbara... Compliments in the press, and I think it says something about please send a copy of a review. And maybe I'll do that. Back in the day, you didn't have Goodreads. You just mailed the publisher a review saying 3 stars. Let's see. I want to know where those photos are because there's some nice ones in here. That, I think, is one of the best bonuses. Sorry to skip over Tokyo, Montana. I'll go back to it. As you can tell here, you get some young Brautigans. You're like, who even is that guy? Who is that guy? He's still got the necklace, the key necklace. But no hat, no mustache, no glasses, no crazy hair. There we go. But you get all his friends in here during the Montana eras. I'm gonna lose this page so much. Let's see, who all... I just think the early photos are very interesting. Because where else do you see that? But it does, like I said, it really showcases Brautigan as a friend and a flawed man. Because there are a lot of flaws with this man. He, I don't know. He points out a lot of his immaturities, his self-centeredness, and that was a lot of his downfall in a lot of ways. Is just not being able to compromise in certain ways or see the changings of time, or whatever it might be. He was, like I said, he was going to turn Hawkline Monster into a film, and apparently he sent in the one script, and it was rejected, but in the sense that he could easily, do a second draft or something like that. It wasn't like it was like fully rejected. They wanted him to put out the movie, but he didn't want to do a second draft. Stuff like that, or his whole thing with all the different women. There's an interesting story in here where he was at a record store in San Francisco in the 60s, and he's kind of making fun of all the rock stars having their face on the book covers, and then Abbott's kind of like trying to point out how the irony was lost on him that his books have him and the attractive ladies and whatnot on them. Very silly man, deeply flawed, but has put out some great books. So on to Tokyo, Montana. I read one story out of this when I first picked this up in that video. And I really like that one. The Hangover is Folk Art. That is a great story. And I want to read it too, but it's just kind of like, I don't want to skip all the way to the end. You can tell there's a maturity in this. I think it's really amazing. Like this compared to a trout fishing is just, it's such a different take on Brautigan because he's just matured so much as a writer. Let me see if I can find a random example. Let's see. What's a fun title? Let's see. That's just in time for Christmas. How about this? What are you going to do with the 390 photographs of Christmas trees? I don't know, but it seems like they're the thing to do in that first week of January 1964. And I got 2 other people to join me. One of them wants to remain anonymous, and that's all right. I think we were still in shock over President Kennedy's assassination. Perhaps that had something to do with all the photographs of Christmas trees. The Christmas of 1963 looked terrible, illuminated by all the flags in America hanging at half-mast week after week in December like a tunnel of mourning. Wow. Sorry, I'm hoping that was actually like filmed on it. I need to figure out a better way if I'm going to do videos like this in the future. How do you read? How do you hold a camera with one hand at the same time? Because I can do one or the other. Apologies for that. The sun is fading out, as it's nearing the solstice. My 1 hour, my 45 minutes of good sunlight in this room is starting to run out. So I will probably end it pretty soon. Once again, would love to hear any opinions if you've read any of these. In terms of what are your favorites, which ones should I get to and prioritize prior to others. I don't know. Let me see if I can start piecing it together again. Oh gosh. This might be an interesting way to end things. But yes, like I said, I love these hardcovers. I didn't think I would like them like that, or like them as much as I do, because I'm not a hardcover person. I do love just having a paperback when it comes to most books, but these hardcovers are great. Yeah, if you have read any of these, if you think I should prioritize some over the others, please let me know, and I will surely try to, because they're very interesting. They are some of the most unique books that I've read are Richard Brautigan books, and I think he's an author who's starting to get more acclaim and appreciation, but that's not to say that he's really gotten there yet. And yeah, I think it's always fun when other people want to read more from him and are interested in them, and I think this is a fun collection to have of his books. Boy, this is, I'm pretty sure, not in the right order anymore. But yeah, as I end it, stacking books after tearing them down, let me know. I hope you enjoyed. I can do this, I would say, with the only other authors I would do this with, because I'm not someone who usually is like a mass collector of certain bibliographies, is Philip K. Dick, who I do have really interesting, the old paperbacks of, not all of them, but interesting copies nonetheless. And then I have Vladimir Sorkin, who many of you maybe follow me because of that, more so than Richard Brautigan. And none of those editions are very nice, but I've read them, and I think it would be nice to cover in terms of, like, if you're interested in getting into Sorokin, if you want to, because so many of those books are so different, and very different than, obviously, Richard Brautigan, but, like, very different from each other. So if you are interested in hearing more similar to this, maybe a little bit more put together, author overviews and book collections, please let me know. And I hope you have a good day.